In this video, we will go over how to use the Precision Draw tool. Precision Draw tool is available in all our spatial products, and it allows you to lock your scene in various ways to allow for precision drawing. It is found at the bottom of the spatial pane over here with this lock symbol. Clicking on it brings up the dialog. In the first tab, Coordinates, you can choose to lock specific coordinates in the scene as you draw. These are the absolute coordinates of the Cartesian plane that you're on that you can lock. So for example, if I choose to draw a 3D line string here, and let's say I want to lock the x coordinate, what you can do is simply enter in the coordinates in the fields here and then hit the lock symbol to lock it. For example, you can see this one is already locked, my y coordinate here, as shown by the lock symbol. And to unlock it, you can just click on it again and it's unlocked. An easier way is to move to the exact coordinate in your scene, put your cursor there and choose the point where you want to lock at, and then hit one of the hotkeys to lock the coordinate. So to lock x, you hit the x key, to lock y, you hit the y key, and to lock z, you hit the z key. So for example, I want to lock my x coordinates over here where my cursor is, so I'll hit the x key, and you can see the lock symbol has gone on. Before actually moving your cursor and hitting the key to lock it, make sure that you have first clicked on the dialog box so that it's active, and then move your cursor. Don't click in the scene yet, just move it to the position and then hit the key, and then it will lock. I'll start drawing now. And you can see my x coordinate is locked as I am drawing my line string. There we go, I've drawn my line string. To unlock it, I'll come back, click on the dialog, I can hit the X key again, or I could just click on the lock to unlock it. And there we go, it's unlocked. Now, as one more example, if I wanted to lock the Y coordinates, I can then make sure I first click on the dialog, move in my scene to the exact point where I want to lock the coordinates, hit the Y key, and there we go, it's locked. And I can click to start drawing. And there we go, you can see my Y coordinates is locked. And that's how you lock specific coordinates in the scene. You can also, of course, choose to lock the Z coordinates as well as you're drawing. In the Relative Coordinates tab, you can lock coordinates relative to each vertex successively of what you're drawing while you're drawing it. In this example, I will lock the Y coordinates. So I'll be drawing a 3D line string. And you'll see as I move around in my scene here, if I click on a point, it starts to pick up from that first point that I clicked, and it takes the coordinates then relative to that first point that I clicked as the so-called origin of the Cartesian plane being that point there, and it takes that as the relative. So in this case, I wanted to use this point over here as the starting point to take the relative coordinate from. So I'm going to lock the Y coordinate as it is, and where my mouse is over there, so I can use the Y hotkey to do that. So it's the same hotkeys as for the Coordinates tab, X to lock X coordinate, Y to lock Y coordinate, and Z to lock Z coordinate. The only difference is these are relative coordinates here. So as before, I always make sure I first click on the dialog to make sure it's active, and then I come back in my scene and get to the exact position that I want where the Y coordinate is, and then I can hit the Y key to lock it. And as you can see, there we go, the lock is on and the Y coordinates, the relative Y coordinate has been locked. So I'll begin drawing now. Let me move this aside. And you can see as I draw, it is locking successively relative to the last point that I clicked, the Y coordinate as I want it. There we go. I successfully locked my Y coordinates as I drew my relative Y coordinate. And you can do that for the X coordinates and the Z coordinates as well. Then you can come back and click on the lock to unlock, or hit the Y key again to unlock. And there we go. In the Rotation tab, you can lock the absolute bearing, dip, and distance of your drawing, meaning it is taken from the origin of the Cartesian plane. And you can have these locked as you draw. So in this case, I'm going to draw a 3D point, and I wanted to have a fixed bearing and distance from the origin of the Cartesian plane as I draw it. So I know the bearing and distance values I want, so I can actually just type them in. It's going to be 45 degrees for the bearing. And it's going to be 100 meters for the distance. And you can see as I enter in those values, they are now locked as indicated by the lock symbol. If you wanted to dynamically lock them as you move your cursor in the scene and then hit a hotkey, the hotkeys for this are D to lock direction, E to lock bearing, and P to lock dip. In this case I knew the values, so I just typed them in. Now I'm going to draw a 3D point here, and to illustrate how the bearing and distance have been locked, I'm actually going to click in the center of this crosshair that I have showing, and you'll see how my point gets drawn. So I'll click, I'll say yes, and you can see it automatically gets drawn at that fixed bearing and distance that I chose. In the relative rotation tab, you can set the bearing, dip, and distance in relation to a specific point. So the first point you choose in your drawing will be taken as the reference point in locking the bearing, dip, and distance for your next point. And then this next point becomes the reference point for the next point in your drawing, and so on. In my example now that I'm going to show, I'm going to lock all three of these things, so the bearing, dip, and distance. I'm going to make the bearing 45, dip 45, and the distance 50. You can see as I type them in, they get locked as indicated by the lock symbol being closed here. If you wanted to dynamically lock them as you move your cursor in the scene using one of the hotkeys, then the hotkeys for this are D to lock direction, E to lock bearing, and P to lock dip. In this case I knew what the values I wanted were, so I just entered them in. Now to illustrate this, I'm going to draw a 3D line string here, and I'm going to start drawing it from this exact point here on this other drawing. So I'm going to click, and you can see it's already locked it exactly as I wanted there with the relative rotation. And I'm just going to do one segment of this, so I'm going to double click to finish. So yes, layer has been added, and there we go. Now to see the results of this, I'm going to actually rotate this object here, and of course to snap to vertices and objects, you can use one of the snap tools at the bottom over here. I'm using vertex snap. So I'm going to click, and as it shows the star symbol, it means I found a vertex to snap to, and then I'm going to hold down Control and then left click on my mouse and drag to rotate. And there we go, we can see now how it has been drawn and locked at that 45 degree bearing, 45 degree dip, and 50 meter distance that I chose relative to the first point that I clicked on over here. It's honored that and locked it as I wanted. Then finally in the plane tab, you can lock the view plane so that no matter what orientation your scene is at, your drawing will be drawn to that locked view plane that you set. So you can enter in these values manually, or you can go to the orientation that you want in your scene and then simply click here the copy scene plane button. So in this example right now, I actually want it to be locked to this general viewing from the top view of my view plane as I'm at right now. So I can just say copy scene plane, and there we go, it's copied the exact plane that I'm at this top orientation as well, and then I can hit the lock key here to lock that. There we go, my view plane has been locked. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change my view plane by rotating the scene here just to illustrate how the view plane has been locked. So I'm going to just hold down Control, left click, drag, and I'm changing the orientation here, my view plane. Let's say I'm at this orientation like this. If I had to then try draw something, let's say, so I'm going to click, drawing a line string, and I'm going to actually hit the C key to close this line string. There we go, say yes, there we go, my line string has been drawn. And as you can see, it wasn't drawn where I just drew it now at this view orientation or view plane, because I locked the view plane. So let's go back to the original view plane here. So shortcut key to change the orientation of your scene to be viewing from the top, you can hit the T key on your keyboard, and there we go. And you can see the line string that I drew actually is locked to this view plane over here, even though I had my view orientation changed around, it actually locked it to this view plane as I drew it and made sure it was drawn on this same view plane as this other drawing over here. Now, of course, the view plane is also the exact view depth that you're at that has been locked. So similarly, if I had to go to a different view depth and draw over there, it would still honor and lock it to the original view depth of the view plane that I locked at the exact elevation where that was. Now, as a final point, the plane and relative rotation tabs can work together as indicated by the lock icon next to them when you are switching between them. So, for example, here, as I'm on my plane tab, you can see this little lock icon showing next to the relative rotation because I have my relative rotation locked as well, and also have my plane locked. So when I come to my relative rotation, there's a lock symbol showing next to plane. So these are the only two tabs that can be locked simultaneously. And if you go to any of these other tabs while these are locked, then the lock icon is actually going to disappear. So if I come here to rotation, then it actually goes away. So these two, relative rotation and plane, can be locked and work together, but the others not. Alright, now to illustrate these two tabs working together or being locked together, I'm going to lock here, first of all, my relative distance. So I'm going to lock that at, let's say, 50. There we go, it's locked. And then I'm just going to copy how my scene plane is right now. So I'm first going to unlock the one I had set before. I'm going to copy what the scene plane or view plane is right now, and then I'm going to hit the lock key. So now my view plane has been locked and my distance has been locked for relative rotation. So I'm first of all going to rotate my scene to change the view plane a bit over here to illustrate how this has been locked together with relative rotation. Alright, so I've shifted my view plane a bit here by rotating. And now I'm going to draw with my view plane locked to what I chose and also the distance of my relative rotation locked together. So I'm going to choose 3D line string, and then I'm going to click to start drawing here. Double click to finish. There we go, I've drawn my line string. And then now if I come back and see, or even if I rotate right now as I look, you can see that line string actually has been locked to the original view plane that I had it locked at, and it also locked it automatically to that distance of 50 meters. When I come back to a top viewing orientation by hitting the T key on my keyboard, there we go, and there we go, you can see that is honoring the 50 meter distance relative rotation that I chose, and then also the exact plane that I chose to lock it at. It has been locked together like that. And that's how you can use the Precision Draw tool to lock your scene in various ways to do precision drawing. Thank you.